The rain-slicked cobblestones of Barcelona's Gothic quarter gleamed like shattered glass under the street lamps, but Lucia Vargas couldn't feel the chill seeping through her thin jacket. Her mother's voice sliced through the downpour like a serrated knife. "Get out. You're no daughter of mine, not like this." The words hung in the air, heavier than the storm clouds that had just broken, as Lucia's world cracked open right there on Cara del Bisbee, the ancient archway looming above them like a judgmental sentinel. She'd always known this moment was coming, ever since she was 16 and caught herself staring too long at the curve of Maria's neck in their cramped high school classroom. But knowing didn't prepare you for the expulsion, the way Elena Vargas, the woman who'd raised her on stories of Franco's ghosts and the unyielding pride of Catalan blood, could turn her back so completely. Lucia's backpack, stuffed with nothing but a change of clothes and her dog-eared copy of The Price of Salt, slipped from her shoulder into a puddle, soaking through in seconds. "Mom, please," she whispered. But the plea dissolved into the rain unanswered. Elena didn't look back as she stormed toward their apartment building, the door slamming with a finality that echoed off the narrow walls. Lucia stood frozen, the water streaming down her face mixing with hot tears, until a soft voice pierced the haze. "Hey, you okay?" That looked rough. From the shadowed doorway of a nearby tapas bar emerged a woman with olive skin and eyes like polished chestnuts, her black curls frizzing in the humidity. Amira Khalil, though Lucia didn't know her name yet, held out a faded red umbrella, her smile tentative but warm, like the first hint of sun after a Mediterranean squall. Lucia wiped her face with the sleeve of her jacket, trying to summon some scrap of dignity. "Yeah, just family drama. The explosive kind." She forced a laugh, but it came out brittle, cracking like the thunder rolling in from the sea. Amira tilted her head, studying her with an intensity that felt less like pity and more like recognition. The kind you get when you've been on the receiving end of a door slammed in your face. "I'm Amira," she said, stepping closer, the umbrella now shielding them both. "And if you're looking for a dry spot to spill your guts, my place is 2 blocks over. No strings, no sermons. Just coffee and a couch that doesn't judge." They walked in silence at first, the rain pattering against the nylon like impatient fingers. Barcelona at night was a living thing. Neon signs flickering over Gothic spires, the distant strum of a guitar from some hidden flamenco den, the scent of paella and sea salt mingling in the air. Lucia's mind raced. What now? She dropped out of university last semester, chasing a vague dream of graphic design in a city that devoured artists like tapas. Her part-time gig at the cafe barely covered her metro card. And now this, homeless at 25, outed in the cruelest way imaginable. Amira's apartment was a third-floor walk-up in the El Raval neighborhood, a chaotic mosaic of immigrant grit and bohemian flair. The door creaked open to reveal walls plastered with sketches of Moroccan markets and Polaroids of women laughing in sunlit plazas. Amira's life, captured in fragments. "Make yourself at home," she said, tossing Lucia a towel. "I'm finishing my shift at the bar, but stay as long as you need. Keys under the mat if you crash early." Lucia nodded, sinking onto the worn velvet couch, the fabric cool against her damp skin. As Amira disappeared into the night, Lucia pulled out her phone, scrolling through old photos. Her and Elena at the Sagrada Familia. Arms linked, smiles wide and untroubled. The betrayal stung deeper than the rain. Elena's face when she'd found the letter, the one Lucia had written but never sent, tucked in her journal. "I love a woman," it confessed, words she'd typed and deleted 100 times. Now they were out, weaponized. Hours blurred into a fitful sleep, haunted by dreams of her mother's silhouette fading into the fog of the Ramblas. When Amira returned at dawn, carrying a paper bag of fresh churros and steaming café con leche, Lucia was awake, staring at the ceiling cracks like they held answers. "Rough night?" Amira asked, sliding the food across the coffee table. Lucia managed a nod. Then the words tumbled out, the confrontation, the slurs whispered under breath, the ache of loving someone society deemed a sin in a country that prided itself on progress. Amira listened without interrupting, her dark eyes steady, fingers tracing the rim of her cup. She was 27, Lucia learned, a second-generation Moroccan immigrant who'd fled Tangier's conservative shadows for Barcelona's chaotic embrace 5 years ago. "My family cut me off too," she said softly when Lucia fell silent. Not with rain and rage but with silence. Letters stopped coming, calls went unanswered. It's like they erased me. There was no self-pity in her voice, just a quiet resilience, forged in the fires of too many goodbyes. By midday the storm had cleared, leaving the city scrubbed and sparkling. Amira convinced Lucia to step out, dragging her to the Mercat de Saint-Joseph for a distraction. Stalls overflowing with olives and jamon, vendors hawking spices that perfumed the air like forgotten promises. As they wandered, shoulders brushing in the crowd, Lucia felt a spark, tentative and warm. Amira's laugh was infectious, low and throaty, cutting through the market din when Lucia accidentally knocked over a basket of figs. See? Even fruit knows you're a force of nature, Amira teased, helping her gather the bruised orbs. That night, over shared bottles of Estrella Dam on the tiny balcony overlooking the Raval's rooftops, the conversation deepened. Lucia spoke of her sketches, dreams of illustrating children's books with heroines who didn't need princes. Amira shared her poetry, verses scrawled in a leather-bound notebook about borders crossed and loves unspoken. The city hummed below them, trams rattling, couples murmuring in shadowed doorways, and for the first time since the rain Lucia felt seen, not as a disappointment but as a possibility. But Karma, that sly architect, was already sketching its blueprints. Elena Vargas, back in her echoing apartment, couldn't shake the image of her daughter's soaked figure, the plea in her eyes like a mirror to her own youth, defiant, loving against the grain. She poured a glass of Rioja, hands trembling, and wondered if pride was worth the hollowness it left behind. Weeks melted into a fragile routine, Barcelona's relentless sun marking time like a metronome. Lucia crashed on Amira's couch, then her bed when the lines blurred one humid evening after too much sangria and shared secrets. Their first kiss happened under the canopy of a jacaranda tree in Parque de la Ciudadela, petals raining purple confetti as Amira's lips met Lucia's, soft, tentative, tasting of salt and possibility. It wasn't fireworks, it was a hearth igniting, steady and warm against the chill of rejection. Lucia found work illustrating flyers for local queer events, her bold lines capturing the spirit of pride parades yet to come. Amira waitressed at the Tapas bar, her tips funding impromptu picnics on the beach at Barceloneta, where they'd lie on striped towels, toes buried in sand, debating the merits of Gaudi's whimsy versus the stark beauty of the Alhambra. "You're my Alhambra," Lucia murmured once, tracing Amira's palm with her finger. Amira laughed, pulling her close. "And you're the chaos that makes it worth wandering." But shadows lingered. Lucia's phone stayed silent. No calls from Elena, no olive branch extended. She threw herself into the budding romance, sketching Amira in stolen moments. Her profile against the sea, curls wild in the wind. Her hands kneading dough from semen in the tiny kitchen, a nod to her heritage. Amira, in turn, wove Lucia into her poems, verses of green-eyed wanderers finding home in olive-skinned arms. Their love was a quiet rebellion, whispered in the spaces between shifts and sunsets. Then came Sofia, Amira's old friend from Tangier days, blowing into Barcelona like a Sirocco wind. She arrived unannounced, a whirlwind of henna tattoos and designer scarves, claiming a spot on the couch with the entitlement of shared history. "Amira Habibti, you look radiant," Sofia cooed, air kissing her cheeks. Lucia watched from the kitchen, a knot forming in her gut. Sofia was all edges and allure, 30, with a laugh like champagne bubbles and stories of modeling gigs in Milan that painted her as untouchable. At first it was harmless. Group dinners of tagine and tortilla, Sofia regaling them with tales of forbidden loves in Moroccan riads. But Lucia noticed the glances, Sofia's hand lingering on Amira's knee, the way her eyes softened when Amira spoke Arabic, a language Lucia could only admire from afar. "She's just nostalgic," Amira assured her one night, as they lay tangled in sheets scented with jasmine oil. "We've been through hell together, but you're mine now." Lucia believed her, burying the doubt like a seed she hoped wouldn't sprout. Karma's first whisper came subtly. Elena, unable to sleep, began volunteering at a community center in Gracia, sorting donations for immigrant families, a penance perhaps for the daughter she'd cast out. There she met Rosa, a wiry widow with a smoker's rasp and stories of her own lost son to the AIDS crisis in the 80s. "Love isn't a choice, Elena," Rosa said over shared cigarettes in the alley. "It's a storm you weather or drown in." The words burrowed, unsettling the fortress Elena had built around her heart. Back in Raval, tensions simmered. Sophia suggested a night out at La Federica, a thumping lesbian club in Pobl Sec, to shake off the dust. Lucia hesitated. Crowd still made her flinch, reminders of Elena's venom, but Amira's enthusiasm won out. The club pulsed with bass and bodies, strobe lights carving faces from shadow. Sophia danced like she owned the floor, pulling Amira into the fray, their hips swaying in sync to reggaeton beats. Lucia nursed a gin and tonic at the bar, the lime's bitterness mirroring her mood. When Amira returned, flushed and laughing, Sophia trailed behind, her arms slung possessively around Amira's waist. "Your girl's a natural," Sophia purred to Lucia, but her eyes said something sharper. Later, in the cab home, Amira was distant, scrolling her phone with a secretive smile. Lucia's question hung unanswered. "Everything okay?" The seed sprouted, its roots twisting. The betrayal unfolded on a sweltering August afternoon. Lucia came home early from a design meeting, the apartment door ajar. Inside, voices low, intimate. She froze in the hallway, heart hammering like a forge. Sophia's laugh, then Amira's murmur. "We can't, Soph. Lucia. She's everything." But the pause that followed was a chasm. Peering through the crack, Lucia saw them on the couch, Sophia's head on Amira's shoulder, hands intertwined, tears streaking Sophia's cheeks. Just this once for old times? She'll never know. Lucia's world tilted. She backed away, fleeing down the stairs, the city blurring into a smear of heat and hurt. She ended up at the beach, waves crashing like accusations, sand caking her jeans as she sobbed into her knees. How could Amira, her anchor, waver? The love they'd built, nights of whispered vows under star-pricked skies, felt like fool's gold now. Amira found her at dusk, the sky bleeding orange into the sea. "Lucia, wait." But Lucia whirled, eyes blazing. "I saw you. With her. Don't lie to me." The confession spilled. Sophia's desperation, the weight of their shared past, the kiss that hadn't happened but hovered like a threat. "I chose you," Amira pleaded, dropping to her knees in the surf. "Every time." But trust, once fractured, is a mosaic hard to reassemble. They returned home in silence, Sophia gone by morning, her scarf a ghost on the chair. Amira begged forgiveness, cooking Lucia's favorite, paella laced with saffron and shrimp, but the flavors turned to ash. Lucia slept on the couch, sketches abandoned, her green eyes dull as faded jade. Meanwhile, karma turned its gaze to Elena. At the center, she discovered a flyer for a support group, Families of LGBTQ+ Youth, Healing the Divide. Hesitant, she attended. The circle of chairs a confessional. There, amid stranger stories, she voiced her shame, the daughter she'd loved fiercely, now lost to her fear. "I thought I was protecting her," she admitted, voice cracking. The group leader, a soft-spoken man named Javier, nodded. "Protection built on walls becomes a prison. For both of you." As summer waned, Lucia and Amira teetered on the edge. Walks along the Passaic de Gracia became battlegrounds, words like shrapnel. "How can I trust you won't run back to her ghosts?" Amira's response. "Because my heart's here with you." But trust is earned, not demanded. The romance that had bloomed so sweetly now weathered storms of doubt, each argument a petal stripped. Yet in the quiet hours when Barcelona slept, they'd reach for each other, fingers lacing, breath sinking. Love, Lucia realized, wasn't a fairy tale. It was grit, the choice to rebuild after the flood. Autumn arrived in Barcelona with a crisp edge, leaves turning gold along the Eisample's grid like veins of forgotten treasure. Lucia threw herself into work, landing a freelance gig designing posters for a queer film festival at the CCCB. Bold colors, intertwined silhouettes evoking unity amid division. It was catharsis on canvas, each stroke a defiance of the fractures in her life. Amira, sensing the distance, started therapy at a low-cost clinic in Elborn, unpacking the baggage of her family's silence in Sophia's siren call. "I'm learning to choose presence over ghosts," she told Lucia one evening, over mint tea steaming on the balcony. But the rift lingered, a fault line waiting to shift. Sophia didn't vanish entirely. Texts pinged Amira's phone like errant fireflies, apologies laced with nostalgia, invitations to catch up in Madrid. Lucia saw one once, the screen glow illuminating Amira's guilty flinch. "Delete it," Lucia said, voice steady but laced with steel. Amira did, but the act felt like lancing a wound. the scar tissue thin and tender. Karma, ever the patient weaver, began threading Elena's path toward reckoning. The support group became her anchor, Javier's gentle probes peeling back layers of her conservatism, rooted in a Spain that had only legalized same-sex marriage a decade prior, when Elena was already hardened by widowhood and work's grind. Her husband, dead 5 years from a factory accident, had been her buffer. Without him, fear ruled. But Rosa, the widow from the center, invited her to a pride planning meeting. Volunteers prepping for the June march, rainbows unfurling like battle flags. Elena balked at first. "I'm not one of them," she muttered. Rosa's retort was kind but firm. "You're a mother. That's enough." At the meeting in a stuffy community hall scented with coffee and printer ink, Elena listened to stories. Parents who'd lost children to suicide. Others who'd bridged the chasm with apologies long overdue. A young activist, tattooed and fierce, handed her a stack of pamphlets. "For when you're ready." Tucked inside was Lucia's face, smiling from a festival poster Lucia had designed last year. Elena's breath caught. Her daughter's talent blooming in secret. Back home she unearthed Lucia's old sketchbooks, pages yellowed with childhood dreams. Fairies with swords, queens in flowing gowns. Tears blurred the ink as memories flooded, braiding Lucia's hair at Feria de Abril, whispering tales of La Llorona under blankets. "What have I done?" she whispered to the empty room, the Rioja bottle half empty on the table. Across town, Lucia's world cracked wider. The film festival gig led to a collaboration with the director Mateo, whose short about exiled lovers stirred old wounds. During a late-night edit session in his Montjuic studio, overlooking the twinkling port, Mateo confessed his own story. Kicked out at 18, scraping by in hostels until art saved him. "Love like yours," he said, clapping Lucia's shoulder. "It's revolutionary. Don't let doubt steal it." Emboldened, Lucia confronted Amira that night. Not with anger but vulnerability. "I need us to fight for this. Together." Amira, raw from therapy, met her halfway. They started rebuild nights. No phones, just candlelit dinners of gazpacho and stories swapped like trading cards. Amira read her a new poem. In the olive's shadow, green eyes find their roots not in soil of sameness, but in the storm's pursuit. Lucia sketched her response. A portrait of them as intertwined vines climbing toward light. The intimacy deepened not in passion's rush, but in the slow stitch of souls. Yet conflict brewed beyond their walls. Sophia resurfaced, this time with malice. A mutual friend from the club scene tipped Amira. Sophia, nursing grudges in a Gracia cafe, had spread whispers. Lucia the jealous American transplant. Amira the fickle heartbreaker. The rumor mill churned, reaching the festival organizers. Lucia's posters, once praised, now drew side eyes. A sponsor pulled funding, citing internal drama. "It's her," Lucia seethed, piecing it together. "Payback for choosing me." Amira's face hardened, the old fire flashing. She confronted Sophia over coffee in a neutral placa rail. Fountains bubbling like accusatory whispers. "Why poison what we had? I chose my life." Sophia's response was venom. "You chose the fragile one. I deserved better." The words were a mirror to Amira's doubts, but she walked away, blocking the number, returning to Lucia with resolve etched in her posture. The betrayal galvanized them. They channeled it into action, organizing a pop-up art show in Raval, Threads of Us, featuring queer creators' works on resilience. Lucia's centerpiece, a mural of fractured hearts mending with golden seams, inspired by Kintsugi. Amira curated spoken word nights, her voice steady as she recited pieces on borders of nations, bodies, hearts. The event drew a crowd, the air electric with shared stories, laughter cutting through tears. Elena, scanning local papers for distraction, spotted the announcement. Her finger traced Lucia's name. The bio noting inspired by love's quiet revolutions. Heart pounding, she bought a ticket, slipping into the back row like a penitent. The venue was a converted warehouse, fairy lights strung like constellations, the scent of incense and street food mingling. As Lucia unveiled the mural, voice trembling with pride, Elena's chest tightened. There beside her, Amira, strong, radiant, beamed like a co-conspirator. After the applause, Elena lingered in the shadows, watching Lucia laugh with admirers, Amira's hand on her lower back. A touch of possession and protection. The urge to approach Ward with shame, but karma nudged. A spilled drink sent Elena stumbling forward, right into Lucia's path. Their eyes met, green locking with Hazel, and time fractured. Mom! Lucia breathed, the word a bridge or a blade. Elena swallowed, voice hoarse. I saw your work. It's beautiful. The compliment hung, awkward but earnest. Amira tensed beside Lucia, but Lucia held up a hand, granting space. Why now? She asked, the hurt raw. Elena's response was a whisper. Because I was wrong. And losing you. It's karma I never saw coming. The conversation stretched into the night, spilling onto the warehouse steps under a canopy of stars. Elena spoke of the group, Rose's wisdom, the pamphlets that had cracked her open. I thought tradition meant walls, but its roots flexible, reaching.
Lucia listened, tears tracing familiar paths, Amira a silent sentinel.
Forgiveness wasn't instant. It was a seed planted in tentative soil. As they parted, hugs stiff but real, Lucia felt the weight lift fractionally. Back home, wrapped in Amira's arms, she murmured, maybe karma's not revenge. It's redirection. Amira kissed her temple. To us. Always. But the story's arc wasn't done bending. Sophia, lurking on the fringes, plotted one last twist. Winter crept into Barcelona like an uninvited guest. The Mistral winds whipping off the Pyrenees, carrying the bite of snow from distant peaks. Lucia and Amira's apartment became a cocoon. Scarves draped over chairs, windows fogged with the steam of mulled wine and murmured affections. Elena's olive branch bore tentative fruit. Weekly coffees at a quiet cafe near the Boqueria, where apologies flowed like the market's fountains. I was scared, Elena admitted over cortados, her hands twisting a napkin. Of what they'd say at the factory, the old guard. But pride's a poor master. Lucia nodded, the scars softening. It hurt, Mom. But I'm building something real here. Amira joined a few times, her presence a gentle buffer. Elena's initial stiffness thawing into questions about Moroccan recipes. Teach me msemen, she requested once, surprising them all. The kitchen sessions followed. Flour-dusted counters, laughter bubbling as dough stuck to fingers. It was mending, stitch by imperfect stitch. A family reknit not in blood's rigidity, but love's elasticity. The art show's success rippled outward. Lucia's murals caught a gallerist's eye, leading to a solo exhibit at a small space in Elborn. Echoes of exile. Canvases exploring displacement of body, heart, home. Amira's poetry chapbook, self-published with Lucia's illustrations, sold out at local readings. Her words a balm for the city's hidden wounds. Their love, tempered by trials, deepened into partnership. Talks of shared leases, dreams of a studio by the sea. Sophia's shadow, however, lengthened. From Madrid, she funneled her resentment into sabotage. Anonymous emails to the gallery. Lucia's work is derivative, propped by drama. Whispers to festival contacts revived old rumors, painting Amira as unreliable. The blows landed softly at first. A delayed payment here, a hesitant invite there. But cumulatively, they eroded confidence. Lucia found the emails one night. Amira's inbox a minefield. It's her again, she said, voice hollow. Amira's face paled. I thought it was over. The confrontation was inevitable. Amira drove to Madrid on a gray December morning, Lucia insisting on coming, solidarity their armor. Sophia met them in a sleek cafe off Gran Via, her poise a veneer over bitterness. You think you can erase me? She hissed, eyes darting between them. Amira's response was steel. You erased yourself when you chose poison over peace. Lucia added, calm but cutting. Our story isn't yours to rewrite. Sophia's laugh was brittle. Story? You're a footnote, Lucia. Amira and I were epic. But the words rang false, her hands trembling as she clutched her espresso. In a moment of raw honesty, the mask slipped. Abandonment by her own family. Lovers lost to safer shores. Barcelona's vibrancy a reminder of her isolation. I lashed out because you're what I couldn't have. The admission hung. A confession laced with envy. Amira softened just a fraction. Then build your own epic, Soph. Without tearing ours down. They left her there. The city lights blurring as rain streaked the windshield on the drive back. In the car, hands clasped over the gearshift, Lucia and Amira exhaled the toxin. We're stronger for it. Lucia said, and Amira nodded, the road ahead straightening. Karma's grand design unveiled itself in layers. Elena, delving deeper into activism, volunteered for the Pride Committee, her factory colleagues raising eyebrows but respecting the quiet fire in her step. She reached out to Rose's network, connecting Lucia with mentors, older lesbians who'd weathered Franco's purges, their stories fuel for Lucia's art. One evening, over dinner at Elena's, now expanded to include Amira and a bubbling pot of cocido madrileno, Elena shared a letter she'd written to her late husband. I told him about you, Lucia. How proud I am. And how sorry. Tears fell into soup bowls, the table a tableau of healing. Amira squeezed Lucia's knee under the cloth, her presence the unspoken vow. We're in this woven tight. Spring tiptoed in with almond blossoms carpeting the Montserrat hills, and with it, the high tide of conflict. The gallery exhibit opened to acclaim, but on the vernissage night, chaos erupted. Sophia, uninvited, crashed the event, dramatic in a crimson dress, a bottle of cava in hand like a Molotov. To the frauds! She toasted loudly, smashing the bottle at the mural's base, shards scattering like accusations. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Lucia froze mid-conversation, Amira lunging forward. Elena, there as moral support, intercepted, her voice honed by years on factory floors booming. Enough! She grabbed Sophia's arm not harshly, but with the grip of a mother corralling wayward youth. You've heard enough. Go home, Nina. Heal. Sophia recoiled, stunned by the stranger's command, then fled into the night, the door slamming like a period on her chapter. The aftermath was a whirlwind. Police reports averted by quick diplomacy, the mural repaired with community hands. Queer artists patching cracks with fresh paint, turning damage into dialogue. Media picked it up, a local paper's feature. Art of Resilience. Barcelona's lesbians fight back. Lucia and Amira became inadvertent icons, their story a beacon for youth navigating similar storms. In the quiet after on a bench in Park Güell, mosaics shimmering under moonlight, Lucia turned to Amira. That could have broken us. Amira's reply was a kiss, slow and sure. But it didn't. Because we're the story that endures. Elena watched from afar, her heart swelling. Karma she'd come to see wasn't punishment but poetry. A narrative where villains found mirrors, heroes their capes in each other's arms. Yet the climax loomed, a final test of the bonds they'd forged. Summer returned triumphant, Barcelona's streets alive with the sizzle of sardines on grills and the thrum of Pride prep. Rainbow flags snapping from balconies like defiant prayers. Lucia's exhibit toured to Valencia, her name whispered in art circles. Amira's chapbook hit a second printing, readings drawing crowds who lingered for her words like moths to flame. Their life together solidified. A lease signed in a notary's office, keys exchanged with giggles and champagne toasts. Elena attended, her presence a quiet victory, gifting them a hand-embroidered runner. For the table that holds your stories. Sophia's silence was a gift. Rumors quelled by time and her own relocation to Seville, chasing modeling dreams anew. Whispers reached Amira. Therapy, a new circle of friends, a tentative peace. Karma's circle, Amira mused, bends but doesn't break. The crescendo built subtly, a storm gathering over the Mediterranean. Elena's health faltered. A persistent cough, dismissed as allergies until a doctor's visit in July revealed lung shadows, the factory's legacy of dust and denial. Stage 2, treatable but tenacious. She told Lucia over Helledew at a Born Gelateria. The air thick with jasmine and dread. Don't you dare pity me, Elena said, spoon midway to her mouth. I've got fights left. Lucia crumbled, the spoon clattering to the table. Amira arrived minutes later, alerted by a frantic text, wrapping arms around them both in a huddle that blocked the sun. Chemo began in August, Elena's silver hair falling like autumn leaves, but her spirit sharpened, volunteering from her hospital bed, zooming Pride logistics with Javier. If I'm going down, she joked, it's with glitter on my veins. The family they'd rebuilt became fortress. Lucia sketching motivational cards for Elena's room. Warrior women with capes of Catalan flags. Amira cooking nutrient-packed tagines, infusing them with stories of Moroccan healers who'd outwitted empires. Neighbors dropped by with payambi tamaquet and empanadas, the building a web of support woven from Elena's long years there. As Pride Week dawned, the conflict peaked. Not in rage but revelation. The march route wound through the Gothic Quarter, past the alley where Elena had cast Lucia out 10 months prior. Elena, weak but wheeled in a chair festooned with balloons, insisted on joining. "Full circle," she rasped, bandana tying back her sparse hair. Lucia pushed her, Amira linking arms, the trio a unit amid the sea of bodies. Drag queens on stilts, families with signs. Love wins always. At the alley's mouth, Elena halted the procession, hers at least. She stood shakily, gripping Lucia's hand, Amira steadying the other. Microphones appeared unbidden, the crowd hushed. "This spot," Elena began, voice amplified over the murmurs, "is where I failed my daughter. I chose fear over her light." Tears gleamed on her cheeks, but her chin lifted. "Today I choose love. For Lucia, for Amira. For every heart Barcelona holds." The applause thundered, a wave crashing over them. Hugs from strangers, cheers that shook the stones. Lucia pulled her mother close, sobs mingling with laughter. "You came back," she whispered. Elena's reply. "Karma led me. But you kept the door cracked." The march continued, Elena's chair at the vanguard, Lucia and Amira flanking like guardians. That night, the after-party at La Federica pulsed with joy, bodies dancing, stories shared. Elena, exhausted but radiant, raised a glass from her corner booth. To predictions we couldn't make. To family reforged. Months later, as autumn leaves swirled again, Elena's treatments held the cancer at bay. A remission fragile but fierce. She moved into their apartment for recovery, the space expanding to hold 3 heartbeats. Lucia's book deal arrived, an illustrated memoir of their journey, Shadows to Saffron. With Amira's forward, poetic and unflinching. Sophia sent a card and signed but unmistakable. Epic indeed. Be well. In the balcony evenings, under stars that seemed brighter for the storms weathered, Lucia leaned into Amira, Elena's laughter a new melody in the mix. "We didn't predict this," Lucia said, fingers tracing Amira's. "But it's ours." Amira smiled, eyes like chestnuts warmed by firelight. "And karma? It's just the wind at our backs." The city sighed content, its ancient heart beating in rhythm with theirs. A tapestry of drama and grace, where love once exiled claimed its throne.